What's going on, you guys? Nick here with Seku Technologies. I'd like to welcome you back to your 10th class on JavaScript and jQuery. And today we're going to be talking about built-in objects. So, if you were with us in the last class, we talked about objects a lot. We went through the different ways of creating objects, and we actually went in and created our own objects. But if you're taking a look at the screen right now, you might be thinking, okay, built-in objects. I mean, what the heck is the difference between built-in objects and the objects that we just created in our last video? Well, to be honest with you, there is no difference, okay? Built-in objects are exactly what they say. They're built into JavaScript, okay? These are going to be the objects that you never have to worry about adding any other objects to them or creating your own functions. These have come pre-packaged within JavaScript and your web browser for our use. Browsers come with a set of built-in objects that represent things like the browser window and the current web page that's shown in that window. These built-in objects act like somewhat of a toolkit for creating interactive web pages. Okay? Now, the objects that we created in our last video were specifically written to suit our needs, right? They modeled the data that was used within them and contained functionality that was needed by our script, whereas built-in objects contain functionality commonly needed for many scripts. So in every single script that we write, you guys, you are going to be utilizing these built-in objects in some way, shape, or form. These built-in objects help us get a wide range of information, such as the width of a browser window, or maybe the content of the main heading within the page, or even the length of a text the user entered into a form field. I don't know why anybody would want that, but hey, it's pretty important. Perhaps you want something to pop up on the screen and say your password is too long or your password is too short. That's where you would use that. Okay? Well, what objects are available to us? Better yet, what object models are available to us? Well, you guys, there are three types. The first thing that you need to do is get to know what tools are available to us, okay? You can imagine our new toolkit has three specific compartments. The first compartment is going to be what's called the browser object model. Okay, it's the one that contains objects that represent the current browser window or tab. It contains objects that model things like browser history and the device's screen. So whenever you go to Google's browser history, you know exactly where they're getting it from. Okay. Thing number two is going to be the document object model, aka the DOM. The DOM uses objects to create a representation of the current page. It creates a new object for each individual element and each individual section of text within our web pages. And last but not least, which isn't really a model, but yet still super important, so we're not going to forget about it, is the global JavaScript object, or the global JavaScript objects. The global JavaScript objects represent things that the JavaScript language needs to create a model of. For example, there's an object that deals with only dates and times. Going to be pretty important if we want to invoke some type of timestamp within our web page automatically, right? Right, okay. I know you guys can't, respond to me, but please, I appreciate your enthusiasm. So the browser objects, the browser object model. If we take a look at the picture over on the right side of the screen, the main object is going to be the window. Okay? The topmost object, it's going to be important, always going to use it. However, you have been using it, you just don't know you've been using it. Okay? These are all of the child objects that belong to the overall window object. One of the ones that we've been using quite heavily, might I add, is the document object. Document.getElement by ID. Sound familiar? You also have history, which actually allows us to get the history of our web browser. We have location, navigator, and also screen. Not going to talk about these today. If you want to go off on your own and do a little bit more practice, be my guest, but I'm just going to conceptually show you once we get into the coding aspect of it. The last thing that we do before we get to coding is I want you to take a look at some of the properties and also some of the methods within the browser or within the window object rather. So we have the inner height property, we have screen X, screen Y, location, and there's the famous document, hint, hint, got screen, and these are some of the methods. Alert, sound familiar? Now you actually know what you're doing. You know where all of these objects are coming from, and you also know where all of these methods are coming from. They're coming from the window object. So let's hop over into brackets, and you should have the class number 10 HTML file up, and on the other side a blank JavaScript as always. And what we are going to do is let's first take a look at the HTML. But first what we're going to do is we're going to get the file location of our particular HTML document. We're also going to get our screen height, and we're also going to get our screen width whenever we click on this particular button, About Web Page. Okay, we're going to click on this. It's going to display us an alert that has all of the information within the function that we're about to create. Okay, so without further ado, let's get coding, guys. So as I just mentioned, the only way we're going to be able to make that button work is if we pass through a function. And the name of this function is going to be called website info. Open up our code blocks. And we're going to call the window object the alert method. Looks familiar, right? Every time you type alert, now you know where it's coming from. And that's the object that the alert method is located in. And in our parameters, we are going to have file location. We're going to concatenate window and the location property. The next statement that we're going to type is once again the window alert, because we want 3 alerts. This is going to be for our height. We can call this screen height. Our window object, and now we're going to get the height property. Oops, take that back. Our screen object, then the height property of our screen. Last but not least, we're going to do the exact same thing for the width. Boom, window dot screen dot width. And this is going to be different for everybody, okay? Because we have different screen sizes. So let's go on ahead and run this, and let's see what happens. Oh, first, before we can run it, got to make sure we have the connection to our JavaScript document. All right, great. Everything looks good. Everything is saved. Now let's run it and see what we get. See if our button works. Moment of truth, you guys. Click About Web Page, and there it is. There's the location of the HTML document. There's our screen height in pixels, and there's our screen width. Wonderful. Man, you guys are getting so good at this programming thing. Now, I know that was kind of elementary. You might be thinking, well, Nick, that was pretty easy. But think about the whole host of things that you have the capability to do with these built-in objects, right? In fact, now that we have our browser object model down packed, let's jump over into our DOM, the document object model. Remember, document objects tell us about the current web page and all of its contents, right? The topmost object in the DOM is the document object. it represents the web page loaded into the current browser window or tab. So let's take a look at this tree over here. We have the document object, and this is what allows us to grab the content within our HTML. As you can see, we have the head, we have the title, we can get all of the different elements and attributes and IDs. This is what allows us to specifically interact with our HTML documents from a JavaScript perspective, at least the content within it, right? And once again, these are all of the properties and all of the methods that we have available to us within the DOM. Well, there's actually more, but these are going to be the main ones that we at least use right now. So some of the properties, we have title. We can see when the document was last modified. We have URL, and we also have the domain property, okay, which returns the domain of the current document. I'm getting trigger happy here. We also have the right method, okay, the get element by ID, sound familiar? Query selector, create element, create text node. I mean, come on, there's tons of things within the DOM, right? I implore you guys to go in and search through the DOM and just practice stuff. Try to break it. That's going to be the best way you become a programmer. Try to break your stuff and fix it. So without further ado, let's jump back over into brackets. Let's play with the DOM a little bit. Okay. So we've done this many times, but for the sake, we're going to do it again. So we've created a particular element that's called Hotel 1. And all we want to do is update the title. So right now this says Hotel Quay, right? I want to use my JavaScript to update this particular element to say a different hotel name. And you guys should know how to do that because we've done it in other homeworks. So we're going to create a variable called L element. L Hotel 1 is equal to document dot get element by ID. And I know some of you are thinking, yeah, we've done this many times. We're experts. Practice makes perfect, you guys. Now we're going to create a brand new variable called Hotel 1 name. That's going to have the new name of the hotel. We're going to grab the text content property and we're going to update it to say, I don't know, Hotel Macon, because I'm hungry and I want some bacon and it reminds me of it. So if this worked, our HTML document should not say Hotel Quay anymore. Rather, it should say Hotel Macon. I have no affiliation with Macon, Georgia, by the way. So let's run it. And let's see what we get. All right, there we go. Hotel Macon. If Hotel Macon actually exists and it looks like this, I will be more than happy to go. Looks pretty beautiful, you guys. Great. So back to our PowerPoint. That's a little bit of the DOM, but remember, I really want you guys to go in and explore a little bit more. Okay. So next, now we have these global JavaScript objects, right? Global JavaScript objects. Whenever you have a value that is a string, you can use the properties and methods of the string object from within that particular value. Okay. The properties and methods are often used to work with text stored in variables and even other objects. And remember, these are going to come pre-packaged with JavaScript. Okay, JavaScript has a lot of different methods that we can use and also a lot of other properties that we can particularly use. But right now, we're just going to look at them in retrospect to string text and how we can manipulate that text. Okay. So back in my web page, what if I want this to be all caps? Okay, right now it just says Hotel Macon or Hotel Bacon, if you want to call it that. But what if I wanted to show it in all capital letters? Well, once again, my friends, we have built-in objects and also built-in methods in which we can do this for us. So let's hop back into brackets and let's see how we can do that. All right. So first things first, as you can see, we've already developed a variable that connects to the element hotel1 that goes in and updates the text content, right? Well, now, what if I want to, I don't know, make hotel making in all caps, in all capital letters? Well, you guys, super easy. All I have to do is go to the end of hotel making. And all I have to do is call the method, come on, Nick. There we go, to uppercase. And what this is going to do is it's going to take whatever text or string text is located within that particular element, and it's going to take all of that string and it's going to turn it into uppercase. All right. Boom. So let's see if we can make this work. Let's run our JavaScript. Boom. There it is, you guys. Wonderful. So hotel making in all caps. Once again, let's go back over into the PowerPoint and let's take a look at some of the other stuff that we have available within our JavaScript objects. Some of the methods. There's plenty of them. So once again, we have two uppercase. We also have two lowercase in the event that we wanted to make everything in lowercase letters. We have char add, index of, last index of, substring, split, trim, replace if we wanted to replace something within that string text. You name it, chances are you got it, and you're not having to create these all on your own. Pre-packaged on the house for free. We love free. All right. Now, something else that we can do within JavaScript is we can use math functionality, arithmetic. JavaScript has pre-packaged some mathematical methods that we can utilize if we're using numbers. Now, we have some numbers on our page, but for this sake, I mean, it kind of acts like a calculator, and we don't really too much have a use for things such as sine or such as pi within our particular web page. Okay, there's tons of mathematical operations that you can do within these methods, but for the sake of actually being able to use them right now, I mean, we don't really have a need for it. Okay. However, still very important. We're always going to have a use for math. You know, that's all coding is. It is nothing more than algebra, but specifically, we don't have any mathematical operations that we need to carry out right now. But take a look at some of them. Once again, we can utilize pi, the pi property, and we can also round particular numbers. We can take the square root. We can round numbers to the nearest integer. We can also round numbers down to the nearest integer. We can call random numbers. Once again, you name it, you got it. So explore that a little bit in your homework. The thing that I really want to get to is creating timestamps. For example, if I go in and I click a button and I needed to record the time and also the date in which an order might have been placed, or record some type of data at the point in time a user particularly did something, timestamps are going to be really, really, really important. And this is how we create them. Now, in order to work with dates, we must create an instance of the date object. Okay. You can then specify the time and the date that you want it to represent, right? So we're just creating our own instance of the date object. It's already there. We're just creating a brand new instance of it. It's the best word. Try to think of a better one. So to create a date object, we have to use the date object constructor. The syntax is the same for creating any object with the constructor function. Okay, just like we did in the most previous video. By default, when you create a date object, it will hold today's date and also the current time. If you wanted to store another date, you must explicitly specify the date and time that you want it to hold. For the sake of right now, we just really want today's date and right now's time, right? Because that's going to be most important for whenever users click on these buttons. However, before we start utilizing that code, let's take a look at all of the methods that are available within the date object. We have getDate, which returns the date. We have getDay, full year, hours, month. Use these, you guys. I want you to use them. This is going to be the way that you all become better programmers in the long run. Now, keep in mind, you're never going to remember every single method. You're never going to remember every single property. You are always going to need a reference tool. Do not feel bad because it happens to the best of us. Okay, we are not robots. That's why we're using computers, pretty much. So let's hop back in. And now let's go on ahead and create a date object. Now, what we're going to be using it for is back within our web page. Whenever I click on book it, I want the computer to specifically display, alert me of the time and also the date, okay, in which this particular hotel was booked. And the way that we do that, once again, since we're dealing with a button, this particular button has to complete a specific function, right? So we create a function called show time accessed. We want to show the time that this particular button was pressed. I open up my code blocks, and this is going to be where we create the new instance of the date object. So var today equals new date. Okay. And now we're going to create a new variable that's going to hold our timestamp. So our timestamp is going to be equal to today. And we're going to pass through the method called toDateString. And all this does is that it records or displays the date or takes the date that's within our computer. And it's going to show it to us in a form in which we're used to reading. So essentially today is January 7th, 2016. The date is going to say Jan 7, 2016. It's just going to take it and transfer it into a string data. Concatenate, we want a blank space in between. And now we want the time. So we're going to call our today variable, and we're going to go in, or our today object, and we're going to go in and get the toTimeString method. Here it is. All right. And last but not least, we want an alert for whenever we click on the book it button. So alert. And within the parameters, we're going to put our timestamp variable. It's all algebra, you guys. So let's save it. Let's run it. And in case you forgot how buttons particularly work, remember, wherever you have a button element within your HTML, within that button element, you have to say on click, and then you have to specify the function that you want to pass through within our JavaScript. So in this case, we're doing the show time accessed function. Okay, so we have it. And now all we have to do is come back over. Let's run our HTML document. And let's see if our book it buttons work. Boom, there it is, you guys. So it should be specific to your computer's time and also the date. As you can see, 1/7/2016, January 7, 2016, and we also have the day up here. And we also have the time, 9:57 p.m. Great, wonderful. So as time progresses, we'll be able to take these values and we'll be able to stick them into a database or specifically record them and do other things with them. So that's all I've got today, you guys. As always, there's a little bit of homework. But now what I want you to do is go back into our HTML document, and I want you to create a footer section in our HTML page that has a copyright that is attached to the year. Okay. Within our date object, there is a function, or there is a method rather, that allows you to get the year. And all I want you to do is display that year within the footer of our web page. Also, practice invoking the system objects that we learned today to manipulate our HTML content. Okay, so feel free, go through, take a look, just become better programmers. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Good job today, you guys. Pat on the back. Nick with Sekou signing out.